I worked nights at a storage facility, and I still don't know what was inside that unit. My name is Colin. I'm 27 now, but this happened last year when I was 26 and trying to get my life together. I had just moved back to my hometown after a breakup and a really embarrassing stretch of unemployment. I was staying in my cousin's spare room, saving money, and applying for jobs during the day. At night, I worked the graveyard shift at one of those self-storage places on the edge of town. It wasn't a big, fancy facility. It wasn't the kind with a manager's apartment above the office or a huge gatehouse. It was more like a rectangle of long storage buildings, all painted the same beige color, with a single office near the front and a gate with a keypad. There were cameras, but they were older, and the image quality was grainy, especially at night. The owner was cheap. That part matters. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights, I didn't see a single person. People assume storage facilities are creepy because of horror movies, but honestly, it was just boring. The scariest part was trying not to fall asleep in the office chair while the same local commercial played quietly on the tiny TV. The layout is important, so I'll describe it. When you pulled in, there was a sliding gate. You typed a code on the keypad, the gate opened, and you drove down a wide main lane that split the buildings into two sides. Every building had rows of roll-up metal doors. The units were numbered in big black letters. The office was right inside the gate. In the office, there was a counter, a computer, a little safe, a wall of key tags, and a monitor screen that showed the camera feeds. There was also a back room with a bathroom and a utility closet where we kept a broom, a mop, and a flashlight that barely worked. The only access point was the gate. At least that's what I believed. Every customer had their own gate code. The system logged the code, the time, and how long the gate stayed open. That gave me a false sense of security. I felt like, if anything weird happened, there would be a record. That was my mindset when everything started. It began with a new customer renting a unit during the day. I came in for my shift one night, and my manager had left a note on the counter. It said something simple like, "New renter, Unit B-13, paid cash, gate code 4931. I remember noticing the unit number because it felt like a horror movie number, B-13. I didn't think anything of it beyond that. Unit numbers go up and down. It's not like we could avoid that number. It was already on the doors. Anyway, the first night was quiet. Around midnight, the gate opened once. I looked at the log. It was code 4931. The new guy. I leaned forward and watched the camera feed that faced the gate. A dark SUV rolled in. I couldn't see the driver's face because the headlights washed out the camera and his windows were tinted. He drove slowly down the main lane and turned toward Building B. That was it. That was the whole event. I did what I always did. I watched for a second, made sure nobody was tailgating behind him, and went back to my phone. 10 minutes later, the gate opened again. Same code, 4931. Same SUV leaving. That struck me as slightly odd, but not scary. I figured he forgot something, or he just wanted to see where his unit was, and then left. People do weird, inefficient stuff all the time. The next night, it happened again. Around 12:30, gate opens, code 4931. SUV comes in, turns toward Building B. 10 minutes later, gate opens, code 4931. SUV leaves. No other activity. By the third night, I started paying attention. Not because I was scared. More because I was bored, and it was something different to watch. I remember saying to myself, okay, so what are you doing? He never stayed. He never brought a truck or a trailer. He never loaded anything, at least not that I could see. But then there was the problem with the cameras. We had one camera that covered the main lane, one that faced the gate, and a few scattered cameras pointed down the rows. Building B had a camera, but the angle was terrible. It showed the far end of the building, not the center. So if he parked in the middle, I couldn't see him clearly. That started to bother me. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself maybe he was using the unit to meet someone, or hide something small, or just check that the lock was still there. I didn't care, as long as he wasn't breaking rules. Still, the pattern continued. Every night, like clockwork, between midnight and 2 a.m., he came in and left within 10 minutes. Always alone. Always the same SUV. Always using the gate code like a normal customer. After about a week, I decided to walk down to Building B during one of my patrols. We were technically supposed to do a patrol every 2 hours. Most nights I did it just to stay awake. I'd grab the flashlight, step outside, walk the main lane, check for anything obviously wrong, and go back inside. That night, around 1:15, right after he left, I walked to Building B. It was cold and quiet. The facility lights made everything look yellow and flat. I found Unit B-13 easily. The number was painted above the door. There was a padlock on it. A normal silver padlock. I crouched down and looked at it like that would tell me anything. The lock looked new. That was all. I remember feeling kind of stupid, like I was acting like a detective in the least dramatic place on earth. So I stood up, finished the patrol, and forgot about it. 2 nights later, I got my first real jolt of fear. It was around 1:40 a.m. The gate log showed 4931. The SUV rolled in. I watched it turn toward Building B like always. But this time, it didn't stop and then leave 10 minutes later. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. 15 minutes. 20. I kept checking the monitor, expecting to see the SUV come back into view. But it didn't. I told myself a normal explanation first. Maybe he decided to reorganize something. Maybe he had more stuff than I thought. Maybe he was sitting in the unit on his phone. Then I heard a noise outside. It was faint, but it sounded like metal scraping metal, like a roll-up door moving. I froze in the office chair. The sound happened again, a little louder. I grabbed the flashlight. It felt ridiculous. A flashlight wasn't a weapon, but it was something. I stepped outside and listened. Nothing. I waited for maybe 10 seconds. The cold air made my nose sting. The facility was silent. Then I heard it again, definitely coming from Building B. I walked down the main lane, trying to keep my breathing calm, telling myself I was overreacting. The closer I got, the more I realized the sound wasn't a door rolling up. It was more like someone dragging something across concrete, a heavy object. I turned the corner and saw the SUV parked near B-13. The headlights were off. The engine was off. The car was just sitting there. The area was lit by the overhead lights, but the shadows were thick around the buildings. I aimed the flashlight toward the unit. The door to B-13 was cracked open, not wide open, just open enough that there was a black line at the bottom, like the door wasn't fully shut. My stomach tightened instantly. Storage unit doors don't just crack open on their own. They have to be pulled down and latched. If it's open, someone opened it. I stood there staring at it, trying to force my brain into a calm mode. Maybe he was inside. Maybe the door didn't latch. Maybe... I heard a quiet sound from inside the unit, not scraping, not dragging. A soft, wet sound, like someone breathing with their mouth open. That was when my fear turned into something sharper. I said, out loud, without thinking, "Hello?" No response. I should have backed away and called the police right there. I know that. I think about that all the time. But I didn't. I took 2 slow steps closer. I was holding the flashlight with both hands, like that would make it more serious. "Hey," I said again. "You okay in there?" Still nothing. I angled the flashlight beam into the crack. It didn't show much. The inside was dark. I could see the concrete floor and the bottom edge of a plastic storage bin. That was it. Then the breathing sound stopped. I held my breath too, like a little kid. Like that would help. And then from inside the unit, I heard a voice. Quiet. Calm. "Can you open it?" The voice sounded like a man, but the tone was weirdly flat. No panic, no annoyance, just a request. I swallowed and said, "It's your unit. You can open it." A pause. "I can't," the voice said. I stared at the crack in the door, trying to process what that meant. I said, "What do you mean you can't?" No answer. I took a step back. The hair on my arms was standing up. My brain was trying to decide whether this was a normal situation or something dangerous. I said, "Do you need help? Are you hurt?" Nothing. Then the voice spoke again, a little closer, like the person had moved toward the door. "Just open it." I know how this sounds. It sounds like a dumb horror movie. The obvious answer is run. But I was trapped in my own logic. This was a customer. This was a property I was responsible for. And the voice wasn't screaming or threatening. It was just wrong. I said, "What's your name?" Another pause. "I forgot," the voice said. That is not a normal answer. That's not a drunk answer. That's not a prank answer. It was like the voice was reading the words off a script. I backed up another step. "I'm calling the police," I said. The voice didn't react the way a normal person would. It didn't get angry. It didn't plead. It just said, quietly, "No, you're not." And then the door moved. It didn't open. It moved like someone inside pressed their weight against it. The crack widened maybe half an inch. The metal made a soft groan. I didn't wait. I turned and walked fast back toward the office, trying not to run because running felt like admitting I was in real danger. Behind me, I heard the roll-up door scrape again. Then, very clearly, I heard footsteps on concrete, not inside the unit, outside, following me. I started running. I didn't look back. I sprinted down the lane, my flashlight bouncing in my hand, my heart pounding so hard It felt like it was in my throat. I got into the office and slammed the door. I locked it. The lock was flimsy, but it clicked, and that gave me a tiny bit of comfort. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped my phone when I tried to dial 911. While it rang, I glanced at the monitor. The camera angle didn't fully show B-13, but it showed part of the lane. I saw someone walking toward the office. It was a man, tall and thin, wearing a dark hoodie. His head was tilted slightly to one side, like his neck was stiff. He was walking at a steady pace, not rushing, not panicking. He didn't look like someone who was trapped in a unit. He didn't look injured. The dispatcher answered. I started talking too fast, stumbling over words, saying things like, I work nights at the storage place. There's a guy. He's in Unit B-13. I think he broke in. He's walking toward the office. The dispatcher told me to stay inside and keep the door locked. I watched the monitor as the man got closer. Then the camera feed glitched. It wasn't a full outage. It was like the video skipped. A second of static. Then the image came back. The man was gone. The lane was empty. I stared at the screen, confused and terrified at the same time. I looked at the office window that faced the gate. I didn't see anyone outside. No shadow, no movement. Then the office door handle moved. Just a tiny jiggle at first, like someone testing it. I backed away from the door. I kept the dispatcher on the phone. My voice sounded far away to myself. The handle jiggled again, harder. The door rattled in the frame. Then a knock. 3 slow knocks. I remember the knock because it wasn't frantic. It wasn't angry. It was polite, like someone at a neighbor's door. The dispatcher asked if I could see the person. I didn't want to go near the window, but I forced myself. I leaned toward the little glass panel in the door. I could see the top of a hood. I could see a pale hand resting against the door frame, fingers spread wide like they were holding the frame for balance. The hand looked dirty, like it had been in soil or grease. The voice came through the door, muffled but clear. "Open it!" I whispered without thinking, "No." The voice changed slightly. It sounded more annoyed. "You let me in earlier." I stared at the hand. My brain was screaming that something was wrong with this whole situation. "I didn't," I said louder. "I don't know who you are." The hand slid down the door frame slowly, leaving a faint smear on the paint. Then the voice said something that made my stomach drop. 4,931. My throat went tight. That was the gate code. The dispatcher told me officers were on the way. She asked me if the person had a weapon. I said I didn't know. Outside, the voice didn't yell. It didn't bang on the door. It just waited. The scariest part was that silence. Because in that silence, I could imagine him just standing there, listening to me breathe, listening to my voice on the phone, deciding what to do next. After maybe 30 seconds, the voice spoke again. "Quieter." "I can wait." Then the footsteps moved away from the door. I watched the monitor, expecting to see him walk back down the lane. But the camera didn't show him. A minute passed. 2. Then the gate log beeped. The gate opened. Code 4, 931. A car drove out. On the gate camera, I saw the same SUV leaving the property. And that's when my brain broke a little, because it didn't match what was happening. If he was driving the SUV out, then who was just at my office door? Unless there were two people, unless the whole trapped in the unit thing was bait. I stayed on the phone with dispatch until I heard sirens. 2 police cars pulled in. They met me at the office door and told me to stay behind them. I stepped out and felt the cold air hit my face like I was waking up from a nightmare. They asked me where the person went. I pointed toward Building B. We walked down together, flashlights sweeping across the rows. Unit B-13 was closed now. The roll-up door was fully shut. The padlock was on it. It looked perfectly normal, like nothing happened. One officer checked the lock. He tugged it. It held. He looked at me like he didn't believe me. I told them everything again, slower. The pattern, the SUV, the voice, the door crack, the knocking. They asked to see the gate logs. We went back to the office. I showed them the entries for 4,931. It did show the SUV coming in and leaving, but it didn't show any other code. No other gate opening. No sign of a second car. The officers went back out and did a full sweep of the facility. They checked the perimeter fence. They checked the nearby woods. Nothing. Finally, one of them said the thing I was dreading. Could have been a homeless guy, he said. Could have hopped the fence. Could have been messing with you. I wanted to believe that. I really did. Because the alternative was worse. After they left, I did something I hadn't done in the moment. I walked back to B-13 alone. I don't know why. Maybe I needed proof that I wasn't losing my mind. I stood in front of the unit and stared at the padlock. Then I crouched down, and I saw it. There were fresh scratches on the metal near the bottom latch, like someone had tried to pry it open. The scratches were shiny, new, cutting through the older dull metal. And on the concrete, right under the door, there was a smear, a dirty smear, like the one on the office door frame. I touched it with the tip of my finger and immediately regretted it. It wasn't just dirt. It was damp. It smelled faintly like something sour, like old food left in a trash bag too long. I wiped my finger on my jeans and stood up fast, suddenly nauseous. I went back to the office and pulled up the camera feeds. I rewound the footage from the lane camera. The video was grainy. The frame rate was bad. But I saw myself running back to the office. I saw the empty lane. And then, for a moment, right before the feed glitched, I saw something at the edge of the frame. A shape. A person standing too close to the camera, almost pressed against it, like they knew the weak spot where the lens didn't fully focus. And the worst part is the timestamp didn't skip. The video glitch happened at exactly the moment the person should have come into view. It was like the camera didn't want to show him, or like someone forced it not to. I sat there staring at the screen until my eyes watered. When my manager came in at 6 a.m., I told him everything. He laughed at first until he saw my face. Then he got quiet and checked the gate logs himself. He told me I was probably tired. He told me people mess around. He told me to stop watching horror videos at night. But then he said something that made my skin go cold. He said B-13 was supposed to be empty. I stared at him. He pulled up the customer file on the computer. The unit rental had been entered, but the name field was blank. No driver's license scanned, no phone number, no email, no signature, just paid cash. My manager swore that wasn't possible. We were supposed to scan IDs. The system was supposed to require it. He called the owner. The owner didn't care. He just said, "If the money's in the safe, it's fine." That was the moment I realized this wasn't going to get fixed by adults with authority. Nobody was taking it seriously. So I did the only thing I could do. I quit. I told them I wasn't coming back for another shift. I didn't care if it made me look weak. I didn't care if my cousin thought I was being dramatic. I wasn't going to sit alone in that office again. A week later, I drove past the facility during the day, just out of curiosity. I told myself I wanted closure. The gate was open. Customers were moving in and out. Normal life. I parked across the street and looked down the lane toward Building B. Unit B-13 was still there. Same door, same number. But the padlock was different. It was a cheap brass lock now, like someone replaced it quickly. And the weirdest part is there was a red tag hanging from it, like a warning tag. I sat there staring for a long time. Then I got out of the car and walked up to the fence line. I didn't go inside. I didn't type in a code. I just stood there at the edge, and I saw something on the ground near the fence, right where the weeds grew thick. A small strip of paper, folded twice. It could have been trash. It probably was. But something in my gut told me to pick it up. So I did. It was a receipt, not from our storage place. From a gas station, and written on the back, in shaky handwriting, were 4 numbers. 4,931. Under that, a unit number, B-13. And under that, a sentence. You opened it once. I dropped the paper like it burned me. I got back in my car and drove away. I haven't gone back since. I still don't know what was inside that unit. I don't know who was knocking on the office door while the SUV left through the gate. I don't know how they had my facility's gate code on a gas station receipt. But I do know one thing. Sometimes people rent storage units for normal reasons. And sometimes they rent them because they need a place to hide something that shouldn't be anywhere near a normal neighborhood. And if you work nights at a place like that, you learn a rule fast. If you hear a voice coming from inside a unit that is supposed to be locked, you don't walk closer. You don't try to be helpful. You don't open it.